Hi and welcome. My name is Amy Bryant. I am here in Atlanta, Georgia with Wild Child Counseling. I'm also online at Parenting Beyond Punishment, where we do parent education and support. And I am here today with Marlyn Tillman, and she is also here in Georgia, and she is the co-founder of Gwinnett SToPP, which is the parent coalition to dismantle the school-to-prison pipeline. It's a mouthful, so I wrote it down, but it's called Gwinnett SToPP for short. And she's also a mom. And Marlyn, you are a parent and a community activist, and you received the Georgia Civil Liberties Award for community activism, and you advocate at the state and national level to impact educational policies as they pertain to the school-to-prison pipeline. So I'd really would love for you to share how you got started in this work.
That was so interesting, and thank you for having me, Amy.
Thank you so much.
It's very interesting how I got started. A teacher started this, so blame a teacher for all that happened. So my oldest went off to pre-K at 4, and I've been an at-home mom for most of the time of his 4 years, and so I've been doing a lot with him, and I really was sending him to pre-K for socialization, and I let him go off to school, and I said, I got to find out what you all are doing with my baby. And I gave him a week on his own just to kind of, adjust and feel like he's the grown person he was at 4. And so then I started going into the classroom, and I told them the first day I wanted to observe. They had offered that up from the very beginning. I said, great. So I came in and I said, I just want to observe. And what I observed was 18 little busybodies everywhere with 2 adults. So I came in the second day, and I said, they said, oh, you want to observe again? I said, no, y'all need some help. I want to help.
Yes.
So you're perfectly fine to just sit there. And I said, sitting here is boring. I want to help. I want to get involved. I want to play with the kids. I'm a big kid too. So that started, and the teacher saw something in me that I guess I didn't really see in myself, and she started telling me problems around the school, and I'd get all worked up. Oh, what do we do about that? And she said, well, you just go talk to this one and that one and, go do this and that. And I'd run off and go do it. And she'd circle back a little while later, because I didn't know she was looking for a report. She'd come back and say, hey, I noticed that this and this happened. Did you talk to us? Oh, yeah, that's done. And so she started dropping other little nuggets along the way. There I was now, full-fledged parent advocate. My youngest son also was a child with a disability. From what I was seeing, I saw some differences. And so that also got me started on a different level, starting to research what is this and what's going on with him. My kids are 4 years apart. And so one was a baby who loved going to the classroom, and the kids loved having him. He was always in the doll corner. Housekeeping corner, I think they called it. And so he was always the baby as they played house and everything.
Oh, right.
He loved being there. But it just got me started. Mm-hmm. And interestingly enough, when he was 3, I had someone approach me in a library telling me about curriculum and have I thought about what school he's going to be at. And I, at the time, thought the lady was over the top. And she had a whole list of things that, I should be looking at for when my child starts school. And I said, whatever, I'm sending them to the neighborhood school. But after I started volunteering in the classroom, that conversation came back to me. And it kept coming back in bits and pieces. So then my 5-year-old, and when he finished pre-K, I started looking at, before he finished, I started looking at what other options for school are there. I'm talking to the teachers. I don't necessarily care for all that I'm hearing. And the pre-K teacher offered to help me navigate through the building. And I said, well, I don't necessarily want to have to navigate, and I want something that's going to fit my child's gifts. And so from that, I started manipulating the path through the school system that they would travel. And so both of them attended a magnet in the same cluster, and they started school in Maryland. And so both of them attended a magnet for where their gifts are. And through that process, because I have two sons, we started hitting things along the way, and I had to put on my mama bear suit again and really go after it. And by this time now, my youngest one is also coming up to pre-K, and he does have some disabilities that needed to be addressed. And so we started addressing them before we actually got to the building. And then at 3, they transitioned into the school. And so that gave me that whole knowledge, and I started talking to parents more and more and more, and getting more information, really starting to build my knowledge. My background is IT, so I tend to like data. I'm going to go look up your data. I learned that I really like policy as well. So I like having the written rules. And that was one of the things that I used consistently with the schools as we were hitting problem is, well, show me this in writing. And so stayed on the curriculum side for a long time. We moved to Georgia. Things ratcheted up on the discipline side. And so here I was in my full-blown advocate self now. And by this time, too, I should have said, the pre-K teacher also helped me get a job in the school system. But she said, now you need and I actually got a job at one of the schools because the principal said, you're a high-maintenance parent, and you'll understand our high-maintenance parents, and I'm hoping you can act as a liaison between them and the teacher.
Oh.
That's no problem. But just know you're not going to get totally what you think you're going to get. And he said, I think I worked out. It really worked out. So when we got here and I started hitting issues with my oldest one of them making up rules as they went along.
The schools making up rules as they went along. Yeah.
They made up rules to accommodate whatever he was doing. And really, I think it was all about tearing down his self-esteem and breaking him, which is something that I heard about the school system does for kids who move here from out of state. They want to put them in their box, let them know they're in charge. The only problem is neither of his parents had a box. He didn't have a box, and we weren't willing to accept a box. And so things really got ratcheted up, and they started suspending him. That was the line across. And so at that point, it was called, we need bigger guns.
Yeah.
And our bigger guns was a lawsuit. And so from there, now I'm just really in my full self of becoming aware. The AJC had done some reporting around disciplinary incidents. And so I just made a friend in a reporter and really started digging into it, started helping other parents, and the story went on from there. Gwinnett SToPP was born out of parents coming together, understanding the problem, and really wanted to.
Right. I mean, I think it's amazing that y'all were able to come together, because I think oftentimes as parents, either because we're working and we're busy and we just have a lot going on, that the willingness to share that we're having a hard time and that we do believe in our children and we have to do something about this because this isn't okay is an obstacle.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I found a lot is that parents are embarrassed.
Yes.
And unfortunately, school systems make you feel like it's just your child.
Yeah.
It is just you. It's only your family.
Yes.
And so when you start to feel like that and you internalize it, now they've got you. Now they've got you.
Oh, yeah.
And so you share with other families to find out that your child may have something going on, but don't think that this is all normal for what they're doing to them for that happening. And so that's a big what we did in that, starting to help families is that they're at their wits' end. Usually we got to them because they were going through a tribunal process. And so that would make them reach out further because now they've gotten into something that they weren't bargaining.
Right.
And with that, once you're in that tribunal process, that's the slippery slope right on down into the school to prison pipe.
It is.
And parents were more willing to open up at that point. And they still try to hide some things, and you have to convince them that this is not a judgment place. We're here to get the best outcome for the student. And that's where and there are always going to be accountability mechanisms, but we need to make sure that whatever happens for that student is appropriate, balanced, and consistent with what should be.
Right. It's hard. Schools are not set up to meet the developmental needs of our children at any age. They're just not set up that way. They're not aligned with what we now know about how the brain develops, about what behaviors mean. And teachers, even when they go into it really wanting to be there for students, they don't get the training and they don't have the support they need. And so as a parent, I think, standing up for our children can be intimidating and overwhelming. So like they called you the high maintenance parent, right? We hear that a lot, like, oh, you're a helicopter, you're a worry wart, you're just high maintenance. And that can hold us back. And then we get a lot of messages from society that tells us not to be that parent, the one who blames the teacher or whose kid can't do anything wrong, or, that those messages that we have to cut through so that we can really get grounded, and so what advice do you have for parents like me and parents listening to this today that, how can we know when it comes to knowing our children need us to step in and advocate for them?
So it is a balance, for sure. It is a balance. And I embrace the high maintenance title because what that says is that you're going to pay attention and you're not going to just shove this under the rug because you still have to deal with me. I learned to pick and choose my battles very carefully. And I picked and chose battles based on the child that I had in front of me. We all know our children. For the most part, every once in a while they'll surprise us with something they've done. But for the most part, we kind of know what's within their wheelhouse and what isn't. And if they're outside of what their normal boundaries are, there's a conversation point that you can have with your child to find out what got you there and help them deal with that. One of the things that I tell parents to do is always get the big rocks. There may be a couple of little ones that you get. Always get the big ones. So for my youngest child, he was very much touchy-feely. Everything was about how he felt. Very bright child, an introvert, and wasn't going to come out unless you forced him. And so for me, the big rocks were to get him, and he always wanted to be acknowledged, but was too shy to let you know that. So my big rock was to make sure that he didn't disappear into the classroom. If he felt, and he was a touchy-feely person, so, which I'm not. So it was really difficult for me to show up, and I told the principal once, look, now you've got me here talking about feelings, and I swore I would never be in here talking about anybody's feelings, okay? But for my youngest, if he didn't feel good, nothing else was going to happen. Yep. So we're talking about an extremely bright child who catches on to things like that, math and science geared. He did word problems in his head at like 8. So for that kind of child, those are his big rocks. I got to make sure that he's acknowledged, that the teachers call on him, that they recognize him for being smart, and then take into consideration something that you do may make him feel bad about himself. Yep. And that's a huge rock for him. For my oldest one, he was very social. He needed that interaction with other people. He knew how to get it, So, part of the discussion we had at home was, how do you not be so social and interrupt everybody else? Um, but at the same time, making sure the school knew that's who he was as a
Mm-hmm.
person, to accommodate that.
Mm-hmm.
He was more of that leader personality. Kids followed him. He didn't follow kids. And so, for the rare occasion that he would follow you, I knew how he was as a person, that he thought that was a really good idea, no matter how bad it was. He liked it, he would follow it. And so, I knew to have those conversations with him. And I think we have to be honest about our kids. One of the things that I also never let schools do, and my children do, is use me as a weapon. So I would never have the conversations with my child in front of the school. And I never had the conversations with the school in front of my child. So my kid was not a side by side partner with me as I'm doing advocacy. That's not your business how I get it done. It's done. I'm not going to sit here and tell you, well, I'm going to go get that teacher. I always brought in the part of, how can you help change this? Maybe there's not a way, and they can tell me that too. But then I went back to the school and told them, you were wrong on this, and this. But I always went after the big things. Being able to make sure that my children were getting what they needed while they were at school. They're there for socialization and they're there for education. And both of those things should always feel good.
Right. Well, and I like that, empowering our children. So you're telling me this is what's going on. What is your role in this? What is it that you can say or do to help make some shifts?
Right, right.
And role playing and practicing and drawing it out, and all these ways we can do to help our kids as they're thinking about these things from young ages. Um,
And the
and
most I ever
yes.
if I was going to the school, if it was a situation that I couldn't avoid telling them, and sometimes it was to their advantage to know that I'm at least supporting them. And I'll say something as benign as, well, I'll have the conversation with the teacher, or I'll have the conversation with the principal, and we'll see how that goes. And whatever, they never got the knockdown drag out, except for one occasion. My um, nosy twin friends were listening to their parents' conversation. And in that conversation, we were plotting on getting a teacher out of the building.
Mm-hmm.
They needed to go. And so the children came back and told them, your mom's leading the charge on getting a teacher. And so that was not good. So I had to then circle him back up and say, it doesn't matter what you heard or what I'm doing. It has nothing to do with my expectations for you while you're in that building.
Mm-hmm.
And so we always kept it, I have expectations for you. It's not about what they think.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about what they do. It's what our expectations are and where you want to be further down that path. And so we centered ourselves on that.
Yeah. I think it's important. Like I always tell my daughter when she's having a challenge that I'm on her side. And
Absolutely.
no matter things that are out of your control, you can't take responsibility for, but you can be responsible for you. And then if you make a mistake, it happens. We all do. I'm still on your side.
Right. I always made them understand that you make a mistake, I'm standing right here behind you. If something happened and it's wrong, I'm going to be there in front of you fighting for you. You make a mistake, I'm going to stand here right behind you. I'm going to be your support. And I want you to acknowledge, what you've done and how we move forward. And that's a conversation that we have as a family first before you go off into the world. And I want you to feel good about what you do and moving it forward.
Yeah. So there's a lot of scenarios where our children may need us to intervene. And I really like that you said you have to know your child, right? Know your child and know the big things for them. Children, there are children who need to talk. They should have that opportunity while they're at school to talk. They need that opportunity, and helping the teacher see your child and know those things. I work with a child who needs to move. He needs to move his body. He's in a typical public school. He's in kindergarten
Mm.
and they hardly move at all. And I, helped the parents and the teachers to say, you got to find a way for him to move. When he's not concentrating, you can't just move his name down to yellow or red, and you can't just report him on his class dojo. None of those are going to change the fact that his body needs to move. If you want him
Absolutely,
to be
yeah.
successful, get him to move, and well, children
It's,
need to move.
yeah, well, children always do need to move.
Mm-hmm.
So as you started off, our schools aren't necessarily set up in the best way to accommodate that.
Yeah.
And I think as parents, it's our job to push for those things
Yeah.
and look at your child for sure, but then start to look at how this impacts overall and
Yes.
start those bigger chunks for like everybody.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I affected, and I didn't even know the language I was using. I didn't understand it at the time. I just knew that this is crazy. My child is in a Spanish language immersion program, and the neighborhood was very diverse. And to be frank, they moved the magnet into that neighborhood because it was a neighborhood that would have transitioned over. And so to keep the white parents there, they brought the magnet in and offered the language
Mm-hmm.
immersion. When I got there and my son was enrolled in that, he was one of very few students of color in it. And so with that, they had a school within a school. There was the immersion program with all the white kids and like 4 black children, and 2 biracial out of K through 5.
Wow.
And then they had the rest of the school that was mostly black and Latino. And I said, this is crazy. My
Yeah.
kid is learning Spanish and he can't interact with the Spanish kids who already know Spanish because they're speaking it in their home. How
Mm-hmm.
does that work?
Yeah.
And then so I kept having conversations with the principals and with the principal and the other parents. And so my kid was starting to make some friends on the playground, but they weren't interacting at lunch. And so, with all of my constant complaints, and I said, this is a school within a school. Well, that meant something to the principal. It's called disability.
Yes.
It violates their civil rights,
Oh,
um,
yes.
separate and unequal.
Yes.
I didn't know I'd said all of that. Think what language. But then I got other parents talking about the whole they're not interacting with the rest of the kids. And
Mm-hmm.
so, whereas the white parents felt like they wanted a diverse environment for their child and they wanted that program, they didn't necessarily like that separation either. And
Yes.
so, I got them to start pushing as well
Mm-hmm.
and really having conversations with the principal. And so, for 3rd grade, they started changing it.
Wow.
So for all of the things, they called them specials for the breakout little things like art, music,
Mm-hmm.
PE. They started mixing up the kids
Yeah.
and shifting it. Lunch was a
Which,
little recess. And so now the building is fully interacting
yeah.
in other ways. And so kids are forming relationships and bonds.
Yes. I mean, it's a little mind blowing that I just, I like clearly I'm stuttering. I'm at a loss for words. That it
And
was so separate and unequal. And when you say it that like you go, oh yes, right?
yeah, yeah. And it just took the parents raising that issue
Mm-hmm.
and then having the school understand that this is something we should take care of.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're right. And so,
Yeah.
how do we do that in a way that's going to be meaningful and not disrupt the curriculum for the
Right.
immersion and for what the other students have? So, that was a natural place
Mm-hmm.
to do it because
Mm-hmm.
those are, anyway, it just took a little bit more planning.
Yeah.
Once you up, fun. So, you just keep
Right.
doing that year after year after year. So, it's a one
Right.
time.
Right. And you just are constantly being mindful of that intention where we are going to have all the children do this. This is going to be
Absolutely.
one school. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Some of the more I'm calling it minor, but we know it's not, is PE.
Yes.
I'm sorry, we're going to remove recess from your class because you didn't get ready soon enough. No, 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 no. See, recess is as important as math and science
Ab-
and English. And so you put importance on it and you make it happen, you know.
ab-
I have had to have that conversation at a Montessori school where I'm
yeah, yeah,
like,
and you would, but
right, you would think like at a Montessori school they would do that. And I was like, yes, so Beth says recess and movement may be more important. Right. Our brains cannot integrate left and right and up and down without movement. And learning math and science requires that stuff. We had one woman say, Marlyn, I'm so excited about this and these webinars because of the power of parents. And I wonder if it will be the parents that affect the tipping point that force the school systems to embrace the training they need to learn the neuroscience that is readily available, and that we as parents seek it out on our own.
absolutely. And I think as we become informed, we have to make sure that they're informed, and then we start pushing them to do what they should do. When we made that change about just integrating the kids throughout the building, that was only about maybe 6, 7 parents concertedly having those discussions.
Yeah.
And that was the concentrated group. There were always the ones who may say 1 or 2 things to the school and then run away.
Yeah.
But it only takes a small group to do it and just map out a plan. And I think for parents, if we educate them on this, when they start hitting it, even if they never go out and do that big advocacy plan or join you as you beat down the doors, if they're educated in it, they're going to then take it forward when they have an issue. You know, this would be developmentally appropriate for my child.
Yeah.
One of the things that's coming up is, you know, with the new federal laws around public schools for Every Student Succeeds Act, the new marketing name for No Child Left Behind, which was the marketing name for the Elementary Secondary Education Act. One of the things is the flexibility that's coming with the title funds. And so there's I think it's Title 4 that does the teacher development. Really start advocating, and parents have to be involved with the schools as they write their plans. So insert yourself there. Gwinnett SToPP does workshops around that so we can help you get educated around where your push-pull points are. But at the same time, that should be fundamental. So when they're doing teacher development days, start pushing that they need to learn the brain science that's out there on our children.
Yes.
They need to know developmentally appropriate. And unfortunately, our universities don't do enough of that when they're training teachers. So to just assume that they have it, most of them won't, unless they went further, unless they went to a master's program or really focused in on that. Generally, what I hear from teachers is they had 1 or 2 courses. Not enough. And so that needs to be training that goes with their ongoing development. Nobody, you know, children aren't a total science, but there are some sciences within that raising children that we can grasp and use, and we should. And so incorporating the what we know about brain development, what we know about a child's what's developmentally appropriate, has got to start being part of that conversation. And you can absolutely and should do that.
Yeah. Well, and you know, it's the teachers get so little training on class management as it is. It's all behavioral, and it has nothing to do with how children's brains work. And it's not the teacher's fault. How can they do what they're not taught? You know?
Right.
But it is their responsibility as we begin to bring it to their attention. And it's the administrator's responsibility.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, a lot of teachers feel that classroom management is how to tell a kid stop.
Yeah.
It's not. It is a holistic approach of how you set up your classroom, how you move through lessons, what your lessons look like. All of that helps to manage the classroom throughout the day.
Yes.
So it's a way bigger piece than saying, stop, Johnny, or be nice to me today, Johnny, or are we going to move your little popsicle stick again? It's way bigger than that. That's a teeny of what classroom management is. And I think if parents start having those discussions, even like I said, if they don't get into the bigger advocacy pieces, to start having it regarding their child. You know, when you start hearing it enough, you're going to do something about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so right now, you know, this discipline piece is a big deal in schools, and it's a lot of what you are working on. And, you know, we know that there's very few public schools that are aligned with what we know about brain science, about what we know about learning, behavior, not to mention trauma, like the ACE study that came out of the CDC, which has been around for years, and still people are just now learning about it. Thank goodness for Oprah Winfrey, who started talking about it, right? So right now in Georgia and in, I think, 19 other states in the United States, it's still legal to hit students as a form of discipline, even in schools that have a no tolerance policy for hitting when students hit each other. It's just, I mean, you have to laugh because it is that absurd that an adult can hit an adult, but if a kid hits another kid, I mean, an adult can hit a kid, but if a kid hits a kid, they're out. So are there things we can do to begin to end these practices in our schools?
Yeah, there's a movement, a national movement around trying to end that process of corporal punishment in schools. There was a Mississippi district that recently got that that board policy instituted from parents. That was not. And
so parents did it. I need to call those parents and see what they did.
Oh, yeah. They're also part of that coalition, and they're part of the Dignity in Schools campaign, so I can definitely them. But they just got a big win out of their school system to end that practice. I would say on the short end to connect with them, with the with the national coalition, as well as I can give you some individual members. There is a small group in Georgia that's also working with that national coalition practice. It is absolutely crazy, and schools do things like have you sign a waiver that says, I won't discipline your child, I won't suspend your child if we can beat them.
Right.
You know, you don't need to beat my child. You know, for whatever may happen at home. Why would I trust somebody who's so disconnected to hit my child and to think that's appropriate?
Right.
Not appropriate. It's not. You can't tell me. And then the interesting thing is, if I did it as a parent, you can turn me into the system. But yet you as the system get to beat my child. No. No, it's not appropriate. It's not appropriate. So I would say on a micro level, to have those conversations with school board members, that's where that policy is instituted at. It's instituted at the school board level. So having those conversations with them about, you know, the harm that causes. They're causing trauma in schools. Schools should be trauma-free.
That should be the safe zone, right? We were talking with Tracy Afifi, Dr. Tracy Afifi, a researcher, and she says that they have now finished studies that show that spanking, corporal punishment, is an ACE. It is an adverse childhood event. And it has serious negative consequences on our children.
Not even just to the child who was hit. It's the children who's around them witnessing. So it's trauma for everyone. It's just a traumatic experience, and that should not be allowed. But I would say connect with the National Coalition, and I can definitely give you that information. I will look that up and send it to you so you can share it with folks, because that does need to end. It really does. None of the metro Atlanta schools permit it. However, many of the rural or the further out districts do. And they have parents sign waivers and all sorts of things on, we'll give you this if you give us that. And that should never be.
Yeah, and even parents who say no, you can't hit their child, their children are still getting hit.
Well, so for that, there may be an issue around that if you're telling them. I have to dig through some of my materials. I hang out with attorneys a bunch, so I have to dig through some.
They've got it all. Go ahead, send it all to us. We want to know.
See what that is, but I would definitely put it in writing, insert it into their file. That they cannot spank my child. They cannot hit, paddle, whatever the term they want to use, that they cannot do that. And they may have some levers within that once they put it in writing and insert it into their file.
And I've heard that you should go in and you should talk to them and you should say, this is what it is. I'm signing this. I want you to sign this. It's not okay. And then put it in their file. But I had a woman send me an email who said, I specifically told them they could not do this. And then their son walked out for the school walkout that happened last month. And they told them, we're either going to suspend you or you can get spanked. And he chose to get spanked because he didn't want to get suspended because he's graduating. And so they hit him with a paddle. And she's like, what do I do? And I was like, here's a lawyer that works in this field. Speak to them. I can't. Oh, it's so infuriating.
It is. And so, and the school systems get a lot of leverage out of hollering a school safety. But the other thing is that we've got to start to empower our kids. One of the things that I, especially with my oldest one, that I had to let him know, as I said, I refuse to let either side use me as a weapon.
Yeah.
And so once the lawsuit was filed, of course he knew about it. And we had discussions and he had to be deposed and all of that. So of course he knew what was going on and he was in high school. And so one of the things that I knew about him is he wanted to dance on the line. Not cross it, just dance on it. I told him, let me tell you something. I will let those people eat you. And you handle yourself if you know more than me. Here's what I need for us to be successful. And so you can't be using me that way. I'm not going to go save you. You know the right things and the wrong things to be doing. And you're hurting your case when you do the dance on the line. And so he came clean. Yeah, Mom, I knew it would get to him, and I knew they would be upset. And they were. They called me. They didn't discipline them. They called me. But at the same time, I told the school they were being petty, but jumped all over him, which they didn't know that. I just told them, I'll have a conversation with them, but you're being petty. And that's the only thing I would ever say with him. But one of the things I told him is, if there's anything going on at school, I need to hear it from you first. I'm going to like it more if I hear it from you first.
Yeah, it's the truth, right?
Yeah, I'm not going to like it here from the school. So there was always this mad dash for him to call me before they could. And so we have to empower our kids to understand, I'm going to have your back, but I better hear the truth. All of it, whether you think I'm going to like that version or not. I want to hear all of it from you first. I don't want to hear their version first. If I hear their version first, I might believe them first. And so he was like, oh no, I got to tell my story. And both of them knew that anything that happened, they needed to let me know what it was. I needed to hear the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. And we just moved from there. I made a pact with them that there may be some consequences to what you did. However, I'm always taking the consideration that you were honest with me. And so I really wanted to push that part of the honesty and truth and being able to believe what you say. Because there's that period where truth and fairy tales tend to blend, and I didn't want that. And so I empowered them first to advocate for themselves, but also to let me know what it is that's going on. Yeah,
I think it's that we want our children to come tell us the truth. And so we set them up and let them know, we need to hear it from you. And we also cultivate that trust that we're on the
Right.
same side. I am on your side. Tell me your version. Mistakes happen. Even in your mistakes, I'm on your side.
Exactly,
You know?
exactly. Love you. That's never going to change. I'm going
Yeah.
to always look for you. I'm going to always look for the best outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I always tell them. We need to find the best outcome.
Yeah.
How are you going to be able to learn from this and move on?
Yeah.
And so that
Right.
was, and so, the school used to say things like, you don't hold them accountable, da 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 da. I said, if I didn't hold them accountable, there would be a whole lot more in it going on in here than what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
But that's
And
not
the
fair.
school's idea of holding them accountable is not always holding in that an
It would be
understanding of what was going on. I will absolutely hold them accountable. Tell me what happened. What role did
mm-hmm.
you play? How are you feeling? What can we do
Yes.
different next time? Holding them accountable isn't, you did this, so you're grounded for a week. You can't talk on the
Exactly.
phone. Go to your room. No dessert for a month. You're bad. Like,
They want.
nobody
That's
learns from that. Yeah.
yeah. And I figured that out pretty quickly
Yeah.
as my children were growing up.
Yeah.
And I understand that they're looking at really managing the bodies to be able to sit still. So I think their goal starts off wrong. Whereas they should be managing the body so that people are learning and growing within the space.
Yeah.
And that have those parts where you get to move and you get to talk.
Yeah.
And silent lunch, one half of the day you sit on the side that's silent, the other half you sit. That's your only time to be free.
Yeah.
Okay, in a lot of schools that are rationing recess, when you
Yes.
ask, like, really? So I'm on the side today that doesn't talk. When do I get to talk?
When do I get to talk? Or the teachers who say we have to have silent lunch because it's too loud in here. Put on earmuffs. It's not that, again, it's not the teacher's fault. They need some ideas of what they can do differently, right?
They do need ideas. They do need some
They
ideas.
need some
As
ideas.
I'm working with the school system, when I first started, I was working with the pre-K kids. And so one of the policies was to write, I was instructional support. So instructional support rode the bus with the kids. And so coming home, though, we were on the bus with, when we picked up the kids, it was just the little guys and me. But coming home, we rode the regular school bus. So my little guy sat in the front, and we were on the regular school bus. And I'm here to tell you the school bus was loud. And so after the first week of that, I said, this is too loud. I can't take this. So what are we going to do? This is also a free time for them, and I understood that. So we had the conversation. I'd go sit with them in the back for a minute, and we had the conversation section by section on conversational tone. What is that? And so then we start demonstrating it. And then, as the bus would get loud, really, really loud, because even at conversational tones with that many people, it's not ever going to be quiet. But it did lower the volume a lot. And so they learned something with that. What is a conversational tone? And do you want so-and-so to hear everything you're saying? No, well, they can't. I'm in the front of the bus, I can hear. I'm going to tell all your business because you're telling it to me. So now I'm going to find people I'm going to go tell it to. So they used to laugh at me. Just tell me you tell everything. And I say, anything I'm going to tell everything I hear, and anything else I'm going to make up. And so they tease me about that. However, it is what it is. I lost your sound.
Had it on mute. That's my fault. I was trying not to interrupt you. So, that's that skill building part. And also buses are overwhelming. And so we know that physiologically they're ratcheted up. So if we can help them learn, like you said, how can I teach them conversational tone that helps calm their own regulation system?
Absolutely. And they
And
would
it
tell
builds skills. Yeah.
Yeah, and they would tell each other, don't
Right.
talk that loud. where's your conversational tone?
Yeah. Well, and it's playful. I'm going to tell you stuff if I can hear it. You know, I can hear your stuff, you know.
Exactly. And
It's
that's what I
playing
used to
around
tell
with
them.
it.
Well, I'm able to tell now.
Okay, I'm noticing we're almost out of time, and I want one for people to see the shirt you have on, and for you to
Oh,
talk
yes,
about it.
my shirt.
National Week of Action Against School Pushout. Education is a human right. We will not give up the fight. And it's dignityinschools.org. Yeah, I love it.
So in
Is
the
there,
back is the stop logo.
yes, so awesome. Oh yeah, show us. Is it easy for it to turn around and show us?
Let me see if I can you.
A little higher.
Oh, wait, make the camera higher?
No, make your
No.
body higher. Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
Yes, perfect.
that's about there. And
Nice. GwinnettStop.org. Yay, that's perfect. Thank you.
sure.
Is there a final message you want to leave with parents or educators who may be listening?
Yeah, so I'm going to go through a couple of my little pointers.
Okay.
I have a fact sheet updated.
Okay.
So just parents being advocates. You know, I started off saying know your child.
Mm-hmm.
Start to build that trust and that relationship with them. Cover those big rocks for them.
Yes.
You can't get in the mix with every little thing. School stops listening to you. You need the big pieces covered. If you get the little pieces thrown in along the way, great.
Yeah.
For sure, on anything. Talk to other parents. Don't let the school tell you it's just your child. They're the only ones having the problem. They didn't grasp that lesson. They were doing whatever. Whatever they were doing, they still have the right to learn. Mm-hmm. And you need to make sure that they have that opportunity. Don't do their homework for them. And don't let the school send their teaching lessons home to you to do with them. That's the school's job. Your job as a parent is to let them know what they didn't understand and what they didn't get, and it's up to the school to re-explain it. It's not up to you. Sometimes that puts us in an adversarial relationship with our child, and again, that goes back to knowing your child. So one of my children fully accept me reteaching. The other one wanted no parts of it, but you've got to know your child. But know at the end of the day, it's the school's job. I had a teacher tell me, I refuse to do homework with my children. If they didn't learn it enough to get it, I'm writing a note back to the teacher and saying, reteach this section. Oh, yeah. So we've got to do that. Plan for your school meetings. If 10 minutes is not enough for you, set up something that's longer at a different time. I know they're on their own schedule. Make the schedule work for you. It's for the benefit of your children. Always ask questions. Yeah. You don't understand, ask questions. Always, always, always. Don't let the school or your child use you as the weapon. And make sure there's a neutral ground that you can go between the two. Do not berate the teacher in front of your child. Do not berate your child in front of the teacher. That's dangerous. And let me just say, at the end of the day, get your a copy of your child's records. There's a template on our website every year. If not every year, every other year. You need to get confidential files. You need to know everything that's going on in the building surrounding your child. And then at the very end, the last point I'll make is trust yourself. Yeah. You know when something's a little off. You know when something's good. Trust yourself. In the same way you want to make sure the school doesn't always tell you about the bad child you sent to school, that they can tell you about the good child. Try to do that with the school as well. There are things they do well, and you should let them know that, my child really enjoyed this. They really, really like this. This should happen some more. And so I'm going to plug it there.
Yeah, that's nice. I like that. Thank you so much, Marlyn. I appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. And I know we had
And I read
Yes.
chat and I was trying to work it in, but I think I missed a bunch.
I missed a few too, and I'm sorry. Y'all were saying so many lovely things and powerful things. And it sounds like really most of it is about, yes, that's so much true and that resonates with me. And thank you. And I'm fired up. And I am fired up too, let me tell you. And Marlyn is fired up too. And that's why we do this work. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. So thank you, Marlyn, for being here and sharing your experience and your knowledge. Thank you, parents and educators and everybody else for being here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've got to go through this chat.
Do go through the chat.